Well, welcome everyone to Insight Meditation Community of Charlotte. I'm Clyde, one of the 6 Dharma leaders that are here. We have about 21 people signed up, that are 22 people here, and at least that many, 25 or 30 people here. So that's our Sangha tonight, our Dharma community tonight. Well, a lot of you know, you've been here a lot over the past month. We did our winter series on the Four Noble Truths, and we heard about this thing called dukkha, which could be translated as suffering, anxiety, unease, unsatisfactoriness. But it's here in our life, it's part of our life, that we saw that in our lives. We see this in our lives. The second noble truth, we did the cause of suffering is craving, clinging, attachment. There's a cause for this. The third noble truth is there's a way out of suffering. There's a sensation, a way out. And that way out is the Noble Eightfold Path that Larry talked about last week. Well, as when I was looking and listening to all this and stuff, we use the word craving a whole lot in this, and when we talk about the Four Noble Truths. And I thought, well, if craving is the cause of suffering, why do we crave? What's causing me to crave? I mean, we're craving this and craving that, we kind of know, but what's causing me to crave? And Denise did a real good job of this when she talked in when she gave the talk on the second noble truth about craving. So I'm going to go a little bit of that and then go a little bit deeper. Bhikkhu Bodhi talks about, and you've heard the 5 aggregates of clinging. There's form, feeling, perception, volitional formation, and consciousness. And Denise talked about this. But Bhikkhu Bodhi put it a different way. He says the 5 aggregates subject to clinging. In other words, these 5 aggregates are subject to clinging. So these are things we cling to, that get clung to, form, the body. That says they're subject to clinging. For a long time I thought it was that they're doing the clinging, but we're clinging to them. And Denise did talk about the craving, the 3 types of craving. The craving for sensual desire, the craving for being or existence, the craving for non-being and non-existence. And I'm going to go over these quickly because they're kind of confusing to me, other than the first one. The first one is craving for sensual desires. You know, we have 6 senses, the sight, sound, taste, touch, smells, and thoughts. And it's the craving for the pleasant ones of these, the pleasure. We want these pleasant senses is what we want. And so I can understand that. There's a craving for that. I want it to be a nice warm day. I want it to be pleasant in here when we're sitting. I want to hear good things. The second one, though, is craving for existence. This one's a little bit hard. It's for becoming something other than what you are right now, if I think of it that way. It's kind of like a futuristic thing. I want this, I want that, I want to be this, I want to be that. It's something different than where you are, what you are right now. It's not necessarily always bad, but we just have to be careful when we start doing that. You know, I want to be a better parent, a better partner, something like that. The third one is craving, is the non-existence, is to get rid of things. Getting rid of anger, jealousy, fear, anxiety, could be pain. If there's enough pain, it could be almost the getting rid of yourself. Now those two, the last two, the existence and non-existence, I've always kind of had a little problem. I don't quite understand them totally, so I'm not going to talk about them anymore. But there's a lot of selfing going on in those, I think. I want this, I want that, or I don't want that. But I want to go a little bit deeper into this and go, okay, well, we still talk about craving, a craving for this and craving for that. And I thought, well, what drives this craving? And it comes back to our 3 friends, the 3 defilements. And that's what I want to talk about tonight. Greed, hatred, and delusion. And they're called the defilements, the torments of the mind, the 3 poisons. Guy Armstrong, in his book on emptiness, he says, we translate taha, which is as craving, which emphasizes the activity of desire or greed, generally considered to be for pleasant experience. However, craving encompasses all three forces of greed, hatred, and delusion. With greed, I want more of what is pleasant. With aversion, I want unpleasant to go away. In both cases, I want the moment to be different from the way it is. Craving also includes delusion, because sometimes if we're doing this thing of wanting and not wanting, we miss the neutral times. And also delusion has a lot to do with ignorance, what's really happening in this moment, what's going on in this moment. So it includes all three of these. Bhikkhu Bodhi says, to gain freedom from suffering, we have to eliminate the defilements. And that's eliminating. If craving is suffering, we have to eliminate the defilements to get rid of craving. We used to call it. I remember when I first started out, it was called. I kept reading about purification of the mind. We're trying to purify the mind of these defilements. The Dhammapada says there's no fire like greed, no grip like aversion, no net like delusion. Now, something about these defilements, they're not the true nature of the mind itself, but visitors that appear based on causes and conditions. And it's kind of hard to think of these a little bit like that, but they're really not ours. They're impermanent. They come and go. And it's not our fault. But it's hard to do when I'm being greedy or I'm being angry to think this is not mine. But these arise and pass away based on they're impermanent, just like everything else is. So kind of keep that in the back of your mind when you're dealing with some of this. And they are internal. They arise internally. They're not caused by something out. They're internal to us. So let's look at these. Let's look at each one of these. And fortunately, we're going to define them, and you can identify with them how you can. And then we're going to look at the antidotes to these too. How do we counteract them? Greed. This one's a little bit easy. Our greed is a burning desire, an unquenchable thirst, craving, and lust. We want the objects of our desire to provide us with lasting satisfaction so we feel fulfilled, whole, and complete. The poison of greed creates an inner hunger so that we are always seen to be striving towards an unattainable goal. We mistakenly believe our happiness is dependent upon that goal, but once we attain it, we get no lasting satisfaction. Then once again, our desire and greed will arise, looking outside of ourselves for the next thing that will hopefully bring satisfaction. So this idea of going outside of ourselves, greed takes us outside of ourselves. I think that most of us are probably pretty familiar with greed and how it acts. Our economy, our culture is based on greed. I mean, you see things, you get on your computer and an ad pops up. You have to have this. You've got to have this. Capitalism is based on greed. More. Get it? And we're raised this way. We hear about it every day. So our culture, our economy feeds into this thing of greed. It helps us be greedy. Global conflict and warfare, as well as the destruction of our precious environment, are obvious symptoms of our corporate and political greed. We can see it happening. As a side note, I think our current country is being run by greed. We just see what's happening, and people in charge, it's all about greed driving this and the suffering that it's causing. So most of us are pretty familiar with greed. So let's look at hatred. The symptoms of hatred can show up as anger, hostility, dislike, aversion, ill will, wishing harm or suffering upon another person. With aversion, we habitually resist, deny, and avoid unpleasant feelings, circumstances, and people we do not like. We want everything to be pleasant, comfortable, and satisfying all the time. This behavior simply reinforces our perception of duality and separation. This one was pretty obvious too. You kind of know when you're in that state. What I have to work with on this one are these very subtle states of aversion. Like, I'm uncomfortable right now in this. I wish it was a little bit warmer. I mean, little subtle things of aversion. I really didn't like the taste of this right here. Being aware of that, of how it shows up in our lives, these little subtle, it's easy to say, oh, I really dislike this situation, this person. I'm doing some work in my house that I don't have a washer and dryer, so I had to go to the laundromat last week, do the stuff in the thing, and I was in the laundromat, new laundromat, I'd never been there before, and there was a TV on that had a station on that I don't listen to, talking about someone I didn't want to hear about. And I went, and I could sit there and I felt this aversion coming up within me and this anger get started. And I thought the best thing for me to do is walk to the other side where there's no noise. Because I could see it arising. That's easy to see sometimes. But these little subtle things of someone annoys you or does something, be sure to watch that. This aversion, this ill, I call it ill will. There's some ill will arising around this. This one we're kind of familiar with. The third one, the biggie, is delusion. I like to think of delusion as ignorance. Delusion is our wrong understanding or wrong views of reality. Delusion is our misperception of the way the world works, our inability to understand the nature of things exactly as they are, free of our perceptual distortions. Influenced by delusion, we are not in harmony with ourselves, others, or with life. We are not living in accordance with the Dharma. Ignorance is one of the things we work at when we sit, when we do our meditation, is we want to allow wisdom to come in, quiet the mind, so insights can come in. And we're dispelling this whole concept of ignorance. Ignorance is the starting point of the whole thing. We're ignorant of the way things are. And instead of getting really deep into that, I'm going to give you 4 things that we're ignorant of. We're ignorant of everything's impermanent. That impermanence is the point. Everything's impermanent. And if we try to cling to things that are impermanent, there's going to be suffering. We're ignorant of suffering that is happening, that we're clinging, and suffering is happening. We're ignorant of the fact that it is impersonal, that there's not a permanent I or self here, that it's impersonal. It's not all about me. The concept is that it's all about me. And when you start thinking it's all about me or me, that's delusion. And the 4th one is the idea of karma, that our actions have consequences. If we're ignorant of that, our actions, going back, and this was part of the Noble Eightfold Path. The first right view part of it has to do with karma. And this idea of if we operate out of unwholesome intentions, greed, hatred, delusion, we're going to create more suffering. That our actions do have consequences. So those are 3 things, if you want to get into delusion, those are the 4 things that you kind of focus on. So we have greed, hatred, and delusion. So how do we work with these? This person writes the same thing Bhikkhu Buddha does. The entire aim of spiritual practice is to gradually subdue the poisons of greed, hatred, and delusion by cultivating the alternative mental factors that are directly opposed to them. Non-greed, non-hatred, non-delusion. And that's kind of easy, so we're going to go look at each one of those and see what that means. For greed, we learn to cultivate selflessness, generosity is the big one, detachment, and contentment. If I can be generous and give away things, we contemplate the impermanence or disadvantage of objects of our desire. You remember when we talk, what you'll hear about people going and they used to go meditate in the charnel grounds to see that. Or let's think about your object of desire. I was hot when I was 25, but look at me now. I mean, think about that. Oh, that person's hot. Well, give them a few years and they'll look like this. They're not going to be so hot. So that's what they do about sensual desire. Or going to the eternal round. But this idea of the impermanence of that. So we practice giving away things we like to hold on to. We also practice acts of selfless service and charity. So this idea of detachment, of being able to give away, of generosity, of being content with what I have. So I'm not wanting that greed. We're counteracting that greed. What I have is sufficient. There's no objection to enjoying and sharing the beauty, pleasure, and objects of this material world. The problems that are associated with greed and attachment only arise when we mistakenly believe and act if the source of our good and happiness is outside of ourselves. We can enjoy these things and share these things, but if we look to them for our happiness, that's where we're going to get in trouble. That's greed. Hatred. To overcome hatred, we cultivate loving kindness, compassion, patience, forgiveness. This is where we need to learn. We need to learn to do this. That's why we practice our loving kindness meditation here. When someone comes to you in anger, can you be still? Can you be aware of that? See the anger arising within you and choose to offer some loving kindness. Maybe this person's suffering, there's hurting, there's something going on. Can I have the patience? If my anger comes up, if something comes up, can I have patience with what's happening right now and not have to react right now? And offer some compassion to someone. Developing these characteristics. The more we can develop these characteristics, they're the antidotes, less the other characteristics of anger, aversion can come up. Now, in the laundromat the other day, I did not offer anybody loving kindness. I just walked away. So I'm getting there. But I have used that. I have, when I used to work, if someone was, sometimes someone just strikes you and you're like, why am I angry at this person? And you can go, well, let me send some loving kindness, some metta to that person. And it helps stop me from going down that road. And delusion, the biggie. We cultivate wisdom, insight, and right understanding, learning to experience reality exactly as it is, without the distortions of our self-centered desires, fears, and expectations. That's what we're doing in our meditation practice. We're learning to be with what is as it arises. This is the way it is. We're learning all these impermanence, the factors of existence. We're learning this is the way life is, this is the way the world works, so we can be in accordance with that. We see this impermanence, the ever-changing nature of this world, realizing that all living beings are inseparably related, and that lasting happiness does not come from anything external. We develop a clear understanding of karma, knowing the positive, wholesome actions that bring happiness and the negative, unwholesome actions that bring suffering. This way we can help to free us from this delusion. So through our practice of meditation and mindfulness, we begin to see the way things are, so we can begin to act and live in accordance with the way things are. And I go back to this one, whenever you see yourself going, well, maybe I know a better way of doing this, or I can do that. It's not all about me. This delusion has a strong sense of this I, that I know this, I know that, and we need to watch that. So we have the three defilements, the three poisons, the three torments of the mind. And I think this is what seems to drive craving. Like the good Buddha said, if we want to get rid of suffering and craving, we got to work with these defilements. And it's a long-term process. That's our spiritual journey of greed, hatred, and delusion. We use our mindfulness and meditation practice to be aware of them, first of all, and then to be able to apply the antidote to them, to know these antidotes and to be to work with this and do that. So that's your homework. We've had kind of this theory of the past month of things, but your homework this week is to see if you can not only work at craving, but when you see yourself craving, go a little bit deeper. Is there some greed there? Is there a little bit of this idea of aversion? I want to get away from this, or I hate this illness, this has happened. Even how subtle, and see if you can see the subtle ways that it comes up. The subtle ways the eye starts to come up. And I have to watch that one, this eye. Well, I know a better way, or they should do it the way I think it should be done. So start to do this week, kind of pay attention to it. See if you can see that. Because, as Guy Armstrong says in his book, once craving is activated, we are on the road to suffering. Thank you for your attention tonight.